In this video, we are going to be talking about spiritual protection. I'm going to give you 5 ways so that you can ensure that you are spiritually protected at all times, because we all need it right now. My name's Catherine. I'm a Reiki master, spiritual coach, and nurse practitioner. If you want to work with me, you can go to my website at catherineglassman.com, or you can email me at hello@catherineglassman.com. I've taken a pause from my alien interdimensional species series to talk about David Wilcock, and now obviously we need to have a conversation about energetic and spiritual protection, because these scientists are going missing. Some of them are dying, and we just need to do what we can to protect ourselves in these times right now, because it's very easy to allow these things to kind of slip under our radar. So we have to be very diligent and intentional about this. So the first one is to get rid of stress. I mentioned this a lot in my last video, but I cannot emphasize this enough: to get rid of as much stress as you possibly can. It doesn't matter what kind of stress it is, whether it's money, family, marital or relational, job, health, whatever it is, you want to try to get rid of it, or at least try to minimize it as much as possible. I understand and I empathize with the fact that sometimes you just can't get rid of stress. It's not that easy, but it means that it deserves attention. It means that it needs to be addressed so that you can improve the quality of your life. And sometimes this means that we have to make hard decisions, we have to have hard conversations, and sometimes it means that we have to make sacrifices. But making short-term sacrifices for long-term gains is always going to be better for you, because this is your well-being. This is the quality of your life that we're talking about. Because when you have stressors here and there, they're like little thorns that are just in your side that you just can't get rid of. And you know it's there, but you think it's not that big of a deal. Well, if you leave that thorn in there, then that is a great way for you to get an infection. And then if you get an infection and if you don't address that, then maybe you'll go septic, and then you'll get a fever, and then you'll end up in the hospital. You know what I'm saying? So I'm just using that as like an example, but this is very similar to how stress works as well. If you just have a stressor and you just call it stress, but you blow it off and whatever, then another stressor builds on and another one, and then soon enough you'll see that you have like a rash or something. You're like, oh, that's weird, and then eventually your blood pressure starts to go up. Like, it's all a snowball effect. It escalates. And when these things snowball and escalate, it's really difficult, especially when you're in it, for you to really see what's actually happening. You can't see the snowball effect happening. You don't even know that it's happening until it's too late, until something happens that really forces you to look at it. So if we were to use money as an example, if you are in a bunch of debt, but you're still paying for a bunch of subscriptions, you're just buying things frivolously, right? You're just spending a bunch on Amazon, and you're buying yourself new clothes because you deserve it, right? It makes you happy, right? So it's like a stress reliever in that sense. That's retail therapy, and there's actually like a real term and thing for that. But anyway, and so you justify it that way. You buy the kids new toys, and you go on vacations, and you do all this stuff, and then out of nowhere you get laid off. Well, now you get to be forced to look at it. You get to be forced to admit that you spent way too much on clothes because you really didn't need any. You are spending a bunch on subscriptions that you don't even use, right? So that's just one example. Sometimes, and it's usually pretty inevitable for most people if they're not paying attention to the thing and if they're not intentional, right? Something is going to happen to force you to look at it. So what is it that we can do now to reduce money stress? Can we look for another job that pays better? Can we get rid of some of the things that we don't actually use? Can we tackle debt and pay a bunch of it off, right? So that is just one area of your life where you can try to reduce the stress. Yes, you will have to make short-term sacrifices, but it will be for long-term gains. Same thing with relationships, whether it's with a romantic partner or with friends or with family. This is probably going to come more in the form of boundaries. So if you know that you are in a relationship of some sort and you don't feel like you're being respected or honored, there's a lot of fighting, or you feel like your energy is just being constantly drained and it doesn't leave you feeling good about yourself, about the situation. Sometimes, especially if you're an empath and maybe have abandonment wounds or, whatever the case may be, sometimes you'll feel the urge to just let things slide because you're picking and choosing your battles, right? It's not that big of a deal. I don't want to fight about that right now. It's, we'll address it later. Well, it's inevitable that you will be forced to look at it. So if you feel like you're being treated unwell by a particular person and you just kind of let it slide, and then one day they say something to you that you find to be super disrespectful and then you blow up on them, well, that's just a different example of how you could have made a short-term sacrifice for a long-term gain. If you had maybe addressed it in the moment when it wasn't that big of a deal, and I can't really think of an example, like if somebody makes underhanded comments to you or is a little passive aggressive to you, and you just don't want to make it that big of a deal, so you just let it slide, but then it happens again and again to eventually to the point where you just lose it and you just go off on them, right? Rather than letting yourself get to that boiling point, you could have addressed it much sooner than that and just put up a boundary. Like, hey, I really don't like it when you speak to me like that, or, whatever. But that's just an example when it comes to relationships and how you relate to other people and how they relate to you. When it's like a small thing, that small thing is metaphorically that thorn that is in your side that is slowly growing into an infection. You don't want it to get to the point to where you're septic in the hospital that you address it. The sooner you address it, the better off you will be. Another one is physical pain or your physical body not being in a good place. So in my current job right now, I see occupational patients. So like people who work like workers' comp, right? So if they get hurt on the job, then they'll come see me, and we have to do a whole workers' comp process, right? And a lot of people get stressed out about missing work. Like they don't want to miss any work because they can't afford it. I totally understand that and I totally empathize with that. But and it depends on the situation. But like a lot of times I'll get a patient that hurt themselves, right? They either twisted their ankle or a piece of equipment fell on them or they strained their shoulder or something like that. And I always have to tell them, especially if I ask them to not use the thing. Like, so if they injured their shoulder, most of the time, if it's bad enough, I'll put them in an arm sling and tell them to not use it for a week. And we'll do a follow-up appointment in a week, okay? Then they get really upset. Well, they don't really get upset, but they get nervous that if they can't use their arm, they're not going to be able to work and they really need to work and so on and so forth. Or I've got a bunch of stuff at home that I need to take care of. I don't have time to be in a sling. And I have to tell them, we can either make time to heal it now, or you will be forced to make time at a very much more inconvenient time. So my logic and my rule of thumb is that if you just leave the extremity alone, like leave your shoulder alone and just let it heal, baby it, take good care of it for a week, eat really good food, rich in nutrients and proteins, not using it at all, not straining it, not using it. Just do that for a week. And 8 to 9 times out of 10, by the time they come to their follow-up visit, it's significantly better. And they can be taken completely off restrictions. So we made a short-term sacrifice for a long-term gain. But if you decide to not wear the sling and you decide to keep doing whatever it is that you're doing, now you might not injure it. You might not let it heal. Maybe it will heal and maybe it will get better, but maybe it won't. Because usually, most of the time, insurance isn't going to cover an MRI. So we don't actually know what we're dealing with in that shoulder, okay? We don't know if there's a tear. We don't know if there's a ligament issue. We don't know if it's just arthritis. We don't know. But we know that if you just leave it alone and just try to let it heal as much as possible for a short window of time, then you can set yourself up for success later. But if you just keep using it, you could be making the tear or whatever the issue is worse, prolonging the healing process, and then potentially making it into a chronic pain issue. Okay, so those are just some examples. So whatever the stressor is, address it. Address it and try to eliminate the stress if you can. And if you can't fully eliminate it, then at least reduce it as much as you possibly can. We sometimes forget that we are important and we are worth the care. But sometimes it means that we have to sacrifice certain things. So what does eliminating stress have to do with psychic attacks and spiritual protection? Well, the more stressed out you are, the easier it is for you to be attacked. It's kind of like a predator looking for a victim. And there's been research to show, they've asked people that were incarcerated who had charges of violent crimes and attacking, I think specifically women, and they made them watch videos of women walking. And what is it about a particular woman that they would attack versus one that they would not attempt to attack? And they found that a lot of them would go after the same type of walk. And the person or the woman that walked a little chaotic, a little unbalanced, not paying attention to where she's going, they would often go after her because she appears to be vulnerable. But when it comes to women that walked with their head up high, they looked around with their surroundings, they walked very confidently, they did not want to attack them. When you are under stress, you are vulnerable. This is why society is set up the way that it is. This is why there's a lot of poison in the food. Why insurance companies are basically a scam, why healthcare is so expensive, why you're constantly being fed negative things on the news and social media, and we're going to talk about that. This is why the 40-hour work week was created, among other reasons. All of these things combined make you vulnerable. And so by getting rid of the stress proactively makes you less vulnerable for spiritual and energetic attacks. Because I mean, think about it. Who do you think out of 2 people are going to be spiritually attacked? The guy who is under a lot of stress, he's probably turning to drugs and alcohol because he's under so much stress, he's upset, he just doesn't know what to do with his life, or the guy who is just happy. happy-go-lucky, doesn't have a care in the world because he doesn't have any stress. He's just fine and he's just got a smile on his face. Which one is going to be more likely to be attacked? You know? So proactively get rid of the stress. The second way to protect yourself energetically or spiritually is to reduce, if not eliminate, external stimuli. Of course, I primarily mean like negative stimuli, but the problem with that is that it can be a little difficult to differentiate between the two, and it's difficult to know if the external stimuli is negative versus a way of escaping. So even if you're consuming a piece of content and it's not necessarily negative, you could be consuming it for the wrong reasons. And the reasons could be that you are trying to escape your actual life. So I'm a millennial, right? My parents are boomers. And, you know, there have been plenty of times where we've gone through some sort of crisis here in the US, whether it be COVID or 9/11 or whatever. And there will be times where it could be anybody, but I'm just using the boomers as an example, where they will be glued to the television, watching the news, and just consuming all of the negativity, right? And then they wonder why they're so anxious and they're so stressed. Like, the world is falling apart, I just don't know what to do. And what did all the millennials say? Stop watching the news. Just stop it. So that's a very obvious response or solution to that. Don't consume the negative content. But how does that apply to us millennials or even Gen Z? Social media. Social media is so invasive and so sneaky with how they just put in this negative content. And honestly, it's as if we ourselves were groomed, okay? Like, think about it. Instagram used to be only pictures, and I don't even think that there were really ads, right? It was just pictures. And then it slowly turned into like influencers and posting like unrealistically positive pictures of like their perfect life and how luxurious it is. And then it slowly turned into ads. And now there is just negative content. It's like the news, basically. And I have noticed on my particular algorithm, I don't know about you, but I will get, if I go on one day, it'll be really positive. It'll be about people helping other people. And I don't watch bad, I don't follow bad content. Like, I don't follow things that are raunchy or controversial, or really political. I'll follow things about conspiracy theories, sure. But if I can feel that that's starting to get a little too much into the conspiracy theory realm and it's just not very helpful, then I'll just stop following it. But I'll notice that one day it'll be like very light and fun and positive, and then the next day it'll be just negative and just bad post after bad post, bad things happening to people, bad things happening to animals, and it just toggles back and forth. And that's when I realized that this is a tactic. This is clearly like a grooming tactic. Suck me in with all the positivity and then expose me to the negativity because I'm already sucked in. And I'm just going to come right back because I'm yearning for that positivity. So of course they can just count on me coming back, right? So of course everyone is different. I think a lot of us want to believe that we aren't addicted to our phones and that we're not addicted to social media, okay? And if that's really true, I challenge you to just not use it then. Don't use it for a month. And if you're like all of those other smokers or all those other alcoholics that we've all known that have always said, I'm not addicted. I can quit whenever I want. I just don't want to. Okay? Then you're in denial. Sorry. It just is what it is. Been there, done that. Okay? That's why it takes one to know one. Okay? Like, it's very easy for us to say that, oh, I don't have a problem. Like, well, most people who have a problem don't know that they have a problem. So I will definitely have to catch myself occasionally, and I honestly just need to do this more. But I'm just going to look at social media on my desktop. And I mean, I've done that in the past and it's worked really well. But then there will sometimes be things that are happening in life that I feel like I need to pay closer attention to. So right now, for example, it's disclosure. I'm waiting for disclosure to happen. And so rather than watching the news or going to look for it, I rely on the people that I follow on Instagram to show me the information and the CIA documents and things like that, because I don't want to go hunting for it. But right now, it seems like disclosure's on a pause. So I just remove that app again. Not a big deal. And then that way I can set up boundaries and parameters within myself. So now I just watch it on my desktop. And it's annoying and it's painful to have to get on a desktop and like look at things, but that's the point. I'm trying to make it more difficult so I don't have to expose myself to that kind of content so unintentionally. I also make sure that my phone is plugged into the kitchen rather than in my bedroom, because I don't want the first thing that I do when I wake up is to look at my phone. My brain feels a huge difference when I don't look at my phone, like in the morning. I feel so much more calm. I feel more clear. It's just overall better. So external stimuli, definitely put a check on it. And if not, just eliminate it if you can. But this also applies to movies and books. What are you consuming? How are you consuming it? And how is it affecting you? So I've said on this channel before that I think people should watch horror movies so they can understand how the dark side actually works. But I also understand that there are a lot of people that can't observe that kind of content without absorbing it into themselves. Sometimes some people can't watch something like that without it energetically affecting them. So of course, if it's kind of like, it's sort of like being mindful and meditating. If you meditate and you get these thoughts and then you start to get worked up and riled up from the thoughts, then the best thing to do is to become the observer of the thoughts. Just observe it, but don't become it. It's the same thing with movies and books. You can observe it and take from it the things that you actually need, but not take it into you and absorb it. It's like understanding that you are being mindful and intentional about the things that you are observing and why you're observing it. Because sometimes we can get trapped into watching movies or TV, because TV, before phones came out, right? Back in the day, back in the 90s, TV was what social media is today for kids. Back in the day, our parents would always be like, you watch too much TV, or put a limit on it, because they could just see that your brain is just melting, right? But now it's turned into social media because you just consume it mindlessly without even thinking. And before you know it, like an hour has passed. So with movies and books, be intentional about why you are watching it. Now, sometimes we just want to watch something for entertainment purposes, and that's okay. That's all good. It's fun to be entertained and to be, immersed in a movie. But if you know that you want to be immersed in it, then just understand what it is that you're trying to get from it. And it's also good to be intentional about how you want to feel from watching a piece of content. So if I don't know, if I have been feeling maybe disconnected from the compassionate, loving parts of me, then I will intentionally watch a rom-com and get myself in that space. Like, okay. And you know, maybe that's why people or women, I guess, mostly, but you know, people in general, maybe that's why they watch those kinds of movies after they've gone through a breakup, right? Because they're kind of withdrawing from being in a loving relationship. And so they seek it through watching that kind of content. I know for me, the horror movie thing, and I know it's not for everyone, and if you know that you're just going to be scared and it's just going to have a negative impact on you, then of course don't watch it. But I do challenge people to try to watch it just as an observer, just so you can understand the darkness, and then to also take on the perspective and the intention of coming out of it knowing that you're not going to be scared of a damn thing. That a reptilian, a demon, a monster, a serial, whatever, can come up to me, because I'm not going to be scared of it. And so I know that that's the kind of energy that it brings out of me. So maybe that's why I don't watch them that much, but I've just, yeah, it's definitely like a starseed, angelic warrior thing in me, in my soul that I've got going on. So that's where that comes from. But you know, I just don't want people to be scared, because these things are real. They do exist. They're around us all the time. I just don't want people to be scared. Like I remember going into a haunted house for Halloween one year. I was in New Orleans with a friend at a music festival. I had no idea that she was terrified of haunted houses. Had no idea. And I thought it was funny. It was pretty funny at the time, and she laughed about it later. But going through the haunted house, she was just screaming her head off. And let me tell you, it's not like it was scary. There was we went into one room and there was literally this machine clown that was vibrating like this, okay? And you turn the corner and you just see it vibrating, but because there's strobing lights and there's loud bangs, and because she's already set herself up to be scared of it, she screamed her head off at this vibrating clown. And it was so irrational. Like the fear, it just didn't make sense. But it's also because I don't know, I feel like she just set herself up to be scared already. But yeah, yeah, I'm not laughing at her expense, but it was funny. But that's what I'm saying. Like, there is a possibility that you actually could run into something like this. You could run into something dark. And so I don't want you to be so terrified that you cannot think and you can't protect yourself and you can't make any smart, critical choices. So if you can rise above it and just know that nothing can hurt you, like when it comes to the spiritual and energetic aspect of yourself, you're protected. Just observe it, don't become it. The third way to protect yourself spiritually and energetically is to meditate daily. So the first two things were about like the way the external world impacts you and how it can have a negative impact on you. Well, with meditation, you get to go inward now and focus on the inner world of yourself and calming that down. Meditation forces you to slow down and catch your breath. After all of the consuming of all of the social media and the news and the bad conversations and the stress and whatever, meditation allows you to just sit and let all of that simmer and move out of your body. But the only downside of meditation, if there even is one, is that you have to do it. You have to actually sit down or lay down or whatever and do the meditation. And it would be more beneficial if you did it daily for at least 30 minutes. And if you want to break up the 30 minutes into 15 minutes in the morning and 15 minutes in the evening, that works. I mean, even if you can just pull off 15 minutes a day, any meditation would be better than none. But I think 15 minutes probably should be the minimum. But I think a solid would be 30 minutes a day. And hey, if you were to eliminate the news and get rid of your social media apps, then you probably would end up with an extra 30 minutes in your day anyway. If you actually were to commit to 30 minutes a day for even as little as a week, you'll notice that the outside world just doesn't have the same effect on you. Like, you're not as reactive to everything. And then it helps you also understand what your true baseline actually is. Like, maybe you're not this anxious. Maybe you're not actually this neurotic. Maybe you're not actually this depressed. Maybe you're not actually this angry. Maybe it's just this external stuff that you've allowed to have such an impact on who you are. But when you meditate, you get to just stop and just be with yourself. Not to mention, it will help you open up your psychic abilities, which then will give you more access to other resources like past lives, like for yourself, or the Akashic records, spirit guides and angels. It'll help you open up those lines of communication a little bit more easily. I have never once met anyone who regrets meditating. The only person that I can ever think of would be me when my psychic abilities were first coming on. And then because I heard a voice and it was during meditation and it scared the bejesus out of me. So then I just didn't meditate after that because I thought it was evil. Okay. Obviously in hindsight, I just didn't know any better. But other than that, I don't know a single person who regrets meditating. Even the people that say that they can't do it, they all say, but I should. So meditate, calm the inner world within inside yourself. Of course, there are a bunch of meditations out there, guided meditations, candle flame meditations, you name it. I would do all of them and just, pick a few or pick one that you seem to resonate with. You can take it a step further and use the Expand app from Monroe Sound Science or the Monroe Institute that uses HemiSync technology so that you can sync up the two hemispheres of your brain. Highly recommend it. I'll leave a link down below for it, but I love it. Using HemiSync to me is like a cheat code. What it takes for me to get to, like, in the state of consciousness that I want to get in, that would normally take me 20 minutes, it takes me like 2 minutes with that technology. So just something to think about. I actually was listening to Focus 21 last night when I was going to sleep just for 30 minutes. And I had very vivid dreams. I was able to recall them very easily, and I slept all the way through the night. Okay, the fourth way to protect yourself energetically and spiritually is to give yourself energy. You do not have to be a Reiki practitioner or any other type of energy healing practitioner to give yourself energy. All you need is the intention. And so the easiest and best way that I can think of that I like to teach people is to sit, quiet your mind, take like 3 deep breaths to kind of get yourself into a calm state. And imagine, and of course, this can be a meditation in itself. I would recommend doing it for at least 15 minutes. But sit down, quiet your mind, and imagine white light coming from the center of the universe above your head and pouring over you. and just let it pour over you, washing away all of the negative thoughts, the negative attachments, the negative energy, the low vibrations, you name it. You can give it a color too. So for me, I imagine it as like black or gray, and the white light literally just washing it all off of me. And I'll just sit there and visualize this for 15 minutes. And it will go into the ground and be absorbed by Mother Earth. And because Mother Earth can actually transform and transmute that energy for her benefit. It's kind of like burying something dead into the ground. It's not like it just stays there forever. It starts to disintegrate, and like fungus starts to eat at it. Bugs will start to break it down, right? Like nature will come and change it into a useful form. So it's just the same thing, except it's with energy instead. So let me tell you a story about my awakening and how there were entities coming into my home. When you start to open up psychically, you also become like just a beacon of like a giant welcome sign of like, hey, I'm opening up my psychic abilities, come psychically attack me, right? From all the entities, all the ghosts, all the whatever, they just see you and they try to take advantage of your vulnerability in that moment. So when I was going through my awakening, man, there were so many orbs all the time in my home. Things were moving. I legit had poltergeist activity in my home. That one I ended up crossing over. He was just trying to get my attention. But that's when I learned that I could cross people over. Like, it was a whole thing. So during this time in my awakening, I wasn't fully convinced that I was opening up my psychic abilities. At this point, I was just accepting that things were happening to me. So I had come out of my body at this point. Like things were just happening to me, but I didn't think that it was anything. I didn't think it was like an evolutionary thing for me. So anyway, there was like a 2-week period where my house felt very different, and it was very dark and just a little creepy. I always felt like something was right behind me, especially when I walked up or down the stairs. I always felt like something was right behind me. But of course, at this time, I was just kind of blowing it off like it was my imagination, that maybe I watched too many horror movies, that, just rationalizing it, that it's just all in my head and it's not that big of a deal. And then at night, when I would go to sleep, I would always leave my door open. Okay. Just, whatever. I had pets at the time, and for various reasons, I just preferred to keep it open. But every time I would go to sleep, I would always feel, and again, I just thought it was my imagination. So I imagined a man standing in the doorway, just watching me, only at night, mostly at night. And it just creeped me out so much that I started sleeping with a nightlight. So basically something similar to this light, I would have it on all night long. And this went on for 2 weeks. And so at this point in my life, I was scared of the dark. I always had to have a light on. So if I was entering a dark room, I would have to turn that light on first. And then I would go back into the room I was just in and then turn that light off so that there was always a source of light on. I hadn't done that as an adult in forever, but I did that all the time as a child. I was always scared of the dark. And then around the same time, my German Shepherd, Charlie, I have a picture of her right there. Charlie, she would come over to the side of my bed and wake me up every morning. at around 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning. Would just come lick my hand or do something. She would just wake me up. And so whatever, this went on for a couple of weeks. I was just like, whatever, I'm creeped out, or I'm just scared, or I have anxiety or whatever. I just try to rationalize it. And then one day before I was going to work, I was reading a book on astral projection because I was trying to understand what was happening to me. So I was trying to consume a bunch of material about astral projection. I couldn't tell you what the section was about it, but I don't know why this even came up. But in it, talked about imagining white light come over you and wash negative energy off of you. So I was like, okay, I guess I'll try that. You know, it's not gonna hurt. So I did. So I sat down in my room, I opened it up, and around the same time I had the front door, my door open, and I just imagined a man standing there, like in the morning before I was going to work. And I was like, you know, whatever, my imagination's wild, right? So I started doing this meditation, and I'm imagining this white light coming over me, and I only had 10 minutes. Like 10 or 15 minutes before I had to go to work. So I just did it, and then once the 10 minutes was up, I got up, and I kid you not, the room looked brighter. Like my house looked brighter, as if somebody had come in and opened up the blinds, and it just felt good. The guy that I imagined wasn't standing there anymore. I don't know, it just felt good. And I was like, I guess that meditation actually did kind of work. I went to work, came back, and like the being scared of the dark was gone. I didn't see the guy there anymore. Like all of that just went away. I stopped needing a nightlight. It just all was better. All from that one visualization, that one meditation for 10 or 15 minutes of imagining white light pour over me. Okay. I ended up seeing like a psychic a week later, and she called me out on all of it. She was like, have you been sleeping with the nightlight on? I was like, yeah. She's like, you've been scared. I was like, yeah. She's like, there's something in your house. And then I told her what I did, and she was like, well done. So it works. I was not certified in Reiki at the time. I was not an energy practitioner at the time. I just imagined it, and it worked. So you can add that to your spiritual toolbox of spiritual protection. But you know, this actually also works if you're just not feeling that great anyway. If you're struggling with anxiety, if you just got into an argument with somebody, or you're just upset about anything, it works for that as well. And the fifth thing that you can do to spiritually and energetically protect yourself is to ask for help, aka pray. Now, I intentionally made this the last one because it's probably one of the more important ones, but it also needs to be used kind of strategically. Basically, you don't want to get in the habit of just constantly asking for help without taking some sort of initiative to fix the problem yourself. Because if you're constantly asking for help and you're waiting for a change to happen without you actually having to do it, you're going to be disappointed. And when you get disappointed, you're going to feel like you're being abandoned. When you're not being abandoned, you're being called to take action yourself. You're being called to become empowered that you can make the change. That's why we went over some tools and ways that you can implement into your life so that you can spiritually protect yourself first. And if you're doing all the things and you're doing all the strategies and whatever, and you're still having some sort of issue, then ask for help. You can ask for help at any time, but I'm just saying, try first. And of course, be open to the help. Don't put any expectations on what it's supposed to look like, on how you want the help. They're going to give you the help in the way that you need it, that's going to be for your highest good. Even if it means that you need to learn a lesson in the process. I mean, after all, you did choose to incarnate. You chose to be here. You chose to go through the challenges that you're going through. And it's all for your benefit. You know, if your kid asks you for help on a school project, are you just going to do the project for them? Of course not. You're going to guide them and give them little hints here and there, and then you're going to let them do the project. And when they do the project and they do a good job, it empowers them and gives them confidence, and it raises their self-esteem. So it's the same thing. When you learn that you have the ability to protect yourself, then that makes you significantly more powerful. So just imagine being that powerful, but then also having an army of light warriors and angels and interdimensional beings behind you. Like, you're literally unstoppable. And it's funny because when I was meditating on this particular information, the movie Bruce Almighty came into my mind. And there's a part, if you haven't seen it, it's Jim Carrey, and he talks to God, and, you know, he underestimates everything that God does. So God gives him like God powers. And he's all excited and having fun. And there's a song playing, and it's, I've got the power. And he's like messing with all these things. But it's like that. You literally have the power within you because you have a piece of God in you. That movie's like so symbolic, right? Bruce Almighty, God, you've got the power, you know? Just know that you have it within you, but you also have an army that is standing by willing to help you. So you can always ask. And one last thing, I decided to ask, okay? And I have different ways and different things that I do to ask for help, okay? And one of them is the Bible, okay? I'm not religious by any means. I have a hard time reading, well, this is the King James Version, so that's really difficult to read, but I tend to use it as a tool of divination, okay? So if I am asking for help, then sometimes I will turn to my Bible. And so for this, I asked, and I was asking Jesus Christ specifically for an answer. And I asked, what is it that we can do to spiritually protect ourselves? What is it that you want to tell us of how we can protect ourselves, okay? And so when I ask any question, I hold it to my heart and I just genuinely ask, okay? Then when I'm done asking, I'll fan through it. And when I feel like I need to stop, I'll stop, and then I'll point my finger, okay? So that's what I do. So I asked that question. Specifically, I wanted Jesus to answer it. And I open up the book and I point my finger. And it lands on Psalm 130, section 5. I don't know how to say that, but. And it says, I wait for the Lord, my soul doth wait, and in his word do I hope. The key word being hope. In other words, have faith. Understand and know that God is inside of you. You are a piece of the Almighty that created everything. Understand that you are already protected, and truly believe it. When you believe that deep down into your bones, you might not even be worth psychically attacking. It would be too hard. It's too much work. There are lots of dark things out there. There are lots of evil things out there. None of them are more powerful than God. So remember that. God is in you. God is all around you. Nothing can defeat it, which means that nothing can defeat you. I hope you liked the video. Give it a thumbs up if you did. Consider subscribing, and I will see you next time.